after we went out of boot camp, we went to San Diego, and from San Diego we went to American Samoa, which was the next place they expected the Japs to land, and we spent all our time digging foxholes and carrying ammunition up into the hills to wait for this big attack, and it never came, so we wasted all that time and energy. 6 months of hard labor, and then from there we went to practice landings on the New Caledonia and all the islands, which meant
Bougainville too.
Well, we would go on these ships and load them up, back-breaking labor, loading the ships with ammunition just like it was going to be a real attack. You'd go out there and you'd climb down the net. Climbing down the net's a real experience because you've got a 50, 60-pound pack on your back and you're carrying your rifle and you're trying to get down this net, and the waves are 10 and 20 feet high, and when the boat comes up and then it goes down, you're trying to get off of that net into this boat. Some of the guys fell and broke their legs, broke their arms, and we considered them the lucky ones because they got to go back to a hospital. And we continued on with the dirty end of the stick. But then came the big show when we landed on Bougainville, and that was an experience I'll never forget. We were heading for the beach and hiding in the bottom of the boat. When we got about 20 feet from shore, this 5-inch gun opened up on us and it sank the boat on either side of me, which kind of put us in a little bit of fear. But when we landed right smack in the middle, right facing this gun, and here's this chap. He runs up, he's loading the shell in it to fire the third shell at our boat, but he never got a chance because they just massacred that poor guy. And then we just ran into the boondocks and started the big shindig. You might consider the way the guys are today coming back. They have, what do you call it, this
post-stress syndrome.
Stress syndrome. And I think I had a little case of that when I came back, because I tried to put all that crap out of my mind and not think about it, and I really don't enjoy talking about it. A lot of guys tell war stories and get a kick out of it, but I don't know if I ever have. I tried to give my granddaughter a rundown on my tour in the Marines, but I like to remember the things that were funny and that happened. And my buddy and I, we were stationed in San Diego at the Marine base, and when these boots would graduate from boot camp, they all wanted these medals to hang on their tunics. So him and I, we'd go into town and we'd buy a couple of dozen medals and we'd go sell them to the boots for 3 times what we paid for them, and that's how we earned our beer money. But finally they caught on to that and told us we better quit that because we were ripping off the boots. So then after we were in San Diego, we went to Camp Elliott, which is another Marine base, and spent most of our time going to Los Angeles. Finally, we bought a car. Bought this old, I think it was a 32 Chevy. Paid $120 for that thing. And we used to take 4 or 5 other guys up with us and charge them $5. We called it the puke car, because on the way back, that all 6 of us would be hanging out the window puke from drinking that cheap whiskey in Los Angeles. And of course, in those days, that's all you could get was cheap whiskey. But it was fun. And then, oh, that's a long story. Well, we were at Camp Elliott, Camp Pendleton. Camp Pendleton is where I took a few pictures of the camp there. We lived down, they still have tent camp too at Camp Pendleton, but now it's all barracks. We lived in tents and took cold showers. Boy, you ever want to suffer, you take a cold shower. Anyways, Camp Pendleton was a lot of fun. It was closer to LA, and we got up there and got to the what they call it, the USO in Hollywood. Now that was a place to go. They treated you royal there. They give you all you could eat, donuts, sit you down, feed you, and then all these movie stars would entertain you. And that was the fun part of it. Then from Camp Pendleton, we got, they finally caught up. Howard and I were buddies. He came back with me from overseas. We both got sent back to the Air Force, a Naval Air Force base in Portsmouth. And he went into he got a dog, and he was in the patrolling the ammunition bunkers with this dog. He liked that because you could go out there and he could go to sleep and the dog would be on duty all night. Anybody tried to sneak up on him, and the dog would alert him, and he'd be up on his toes and ready for action. But I was stationed at the main gate, and there you had to be kind of, I don't know, up on your toes. And one of the things I always remember was what we enjoyed doing was all these sailors would go out and they'd go on leave, and they'd go into town and they'd get drunk and they'd spend all their money, and then they'd take a cab, bring them back to the base. When they get back to the base, they would scoot out of the cab and run through the gate, and the taxi driver would be chasing them trying to get his money, and we'd say, no, you can't come on this base. He'd say, well, where's my money? And I'd say, oh, that ain't my problem. So we kind of got a kick out of it. We got to be good friends with all the sailors, and especially the mess cooks, because every night when we'd go on duty, we'd stop by the mess hall, get a great big cardboard box full of all the cake and anything good that they had left over, and we'd eat all night. And any of the drunk sailors, we'd feed them coffee and donuts, and so we were more like heroes instead of being a bad guy. But I just like to remember the good times I had. I don't get a thrill out of talking about being overseas, and we did a lot of things that I don't really think was, well, they did too, so I guess we were just getting even. But you know, when you're with a group of guys and one of them maybe gets a flamethrower, and we sneak up on his bunker and he sticks the flamethrower in one of the portholes, and this 50, about 50 or 60 guys inside. It's not a pleasant thing to think about, because at the time you think, well, I got rid of them guys, but they all had mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers, and the older I get, the more I feel guilty about doing things like that. But of all, supposedly there was 20,000 Japs on this Bougainville, and they ended up, no more than 200 or 300 lived through it. So I guess we did a good job.